Hello. Hello, ma'am. Yes, we are starting. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Aishwarya. I'm currently pursuing my BLLB and working with the E-Justice India platform. So, good afternoon to everyone and to the Madam Speaker. So, today, on behalf of our organization, I extend a very, very sincere and warm welcome to all the members attending an event on the YouTube Live. So, also the Madam Speaker, we heartily welcome you to this platform. So, let me tell you about our organization, that is eJustice India, which has brought you this great webinar on the most important topic, which is in the news and in the media currently. So, what's the aim of our organization? That is, the aim of our organization is to provide the free education in the Indian legal sector. That eJustice India is India's leading online legal portal and a legal Indian law school, and it is managed by CSM Partners and Associates LLP, dedicated to the law students, lawyers, and attorneys. Through this portal, we step up towards right to education. Our portal provides legal news, law articles, leading case summaries, and very which are useful for them and in their career. So, and also we also promote other events through the media partnership. We have approximately 100 campus ambassadors today we have brought this great webinar on the topic, that is the rise of false cases against men and the need of hashtag men to movement today. So, dear friends, now let me give a brief about our respected speaker, ma'am, Miss Sanya Kishwar. She is an enthusiast in the field of human rights. Sanya Kishwar is currently an assistant lecturer at the Jindal Global Law School at the Jindal University, Sonipat. She holds a master's in general laws from the Penn State University, U.S.A, and also integrated bachelors in law and science from the Central University of South Bihar. She has also passed her LL.M in international human rights law from the University of Leeds, UK, with distinction. She was the recipient of the Best Law Student Award in 2018. She received the SILF-MILAT full tuition scholarship towards the completion of her LL.M from Penn State Law and the Liberty Scholarship towards her tuition fees at University of Leeds. Ma'am has also worked with many other organizations in the human rights and the gender issues and the children rights. So, and she also received distinctions in her dissertations. Firstly, we heartily congratulate to you, ma'am, for your achievements and your success. And it's a great pleasure that we are having you today with us, discussing on this topic. And friends, the topic that is raised from the recent Zomato false cases against the delivery boy by a lady, which is very well known to all of us. And the topic for our today's webinar is the rise of false cases against men. And is there a need for a hashtag men to movement? So, ma'am, I would like to proceed with you. It's to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction and so much for setting a background for the topic that we are going to discuss today. So, as you rightly put out, the background in which we are having this discussion. So, this rise of false cases against men, and not just false case that we are seeing today against the Zomato delivery boy, but also other false cases false cases against men regarding rape, false cases against men on accounts of cruelty, etc., etc. So in my talk, I'll discuss some of these aspects, taking help of statistics, and at the end, of our talk, we'll decide for ourselves whether or not we need a Men Too movement or not. So I'll just quickly share my screen. So I have a small PPT so that we can have a look at the statistics and see for ourselves whether this is a problem that we need to address or not. I'll just start sharing my screen, and could you please confirm if the screen is visible? Could one of you please confirm if the screen is visible? Okay, I guess it is visible. So yeah. So the topic for today, as already stated, is rise of false cases against men, and we are trying to answer this question whether or not we need men to movement. So we already have this background knowledge about the Me Too movement. Now we are here to discuss something about the need for a Men Too movement, but we need to know that this term Men Too movement is not something very new. It's not something that I am proposing as a solution against the rise of false cases against men, but it's something that is already in already present in India, and it has been quite a topic of discussion. And it actually was introduced as a response to the Me Too movement, and all of us know what the Me Too movement was about. And women came out telling sharing their stories of abuse at the hands of men, specifically men who were powerful. And this tradition of silence that women were told to abide to was broken in through the Me Too movement. Now, as a response to this, we had a Men Too initiative that was started by an NGO, by a Bangalore-based NGO in 2018, and it's pertinent to note that this movement was not, even though it was it was told that it is a movement that is in response to the Me Too movement, but it's pertinent to know that it was not the only thing that the movement wanted to address, because it did address the false cases and false allegations that came up to the surface during the Me Too movement, but it did have other concerns to address as well. And those were hardships of children that were raised by single parents after a disturbed separation. So they were also advocating that for example, if there is a dispute of custody, we generally see that men do not end up getting the custody of a female child, and there are several types of problems that they face if they're not allowed to get the custody of their kid, or maybe if they're not allowed to meet their kids. So these issues were also discussed through this Men Too movement. And specifically, even the president of the NGO that started the Men Too movement in India, they had justified this movement by placing their by placing their uh, focus on the NCRB reports, and also telling why do we need a Men Too movement. They used to refer to statistics, specifically the steadily rising rate of false allegations. And to note one of the statistics that I have noted in this slide as well. So we can see that in 2019, the number of acquittals in cases that involved offenses against women were huge. And now we can't come to a conclusion that these acquittals were because of these allegations being false. There might be other reasons, and we cannot ignore them. I totally agree that there are reasons that sometimes women take back their cases. Sometimes they maybe they don't have the courage to continue fighting a case because of several reasons, specifically if it's a case involving a powerful perpetrator, then we generally see that it ends up in acquittal, not because the case was false, but because the victim did not have the courage enough to fight, to continue fighting against the powerful perpetrator. And we know that these things do happen. But what I am going to talk today is, nevertheless, we might think that, okay, a huge number of these acquittals might be due to these reasons, which I already stated now. But we have to keep in mind that what about the other acquittals? Now, imagine if out of these number of men who were acquitted in cases involving offenses against women, even if one case was false, what was the trauma that the man had to undergo? What was the trauma that the family of the man had to undergo? What were the implications of false allegations? What are the implications of false allegations against men, specifically if the allegation involves a section which is regarding an offense against women, right? So that's what we have to discuss today. We'll see some examples of false allegations against men and what the judiciary has to say about this, whether or not we have an evolving jurisprudence in this regard, and how receptive is the judiciary of the idea of stopping these continuously rising number of false cases and allegations against men. So, as I said about the implications that a false allegation might have, that's something that we'll also discuss by taking examples. But before that, we know that there is something called a Men Too movement in India, very well. But how has this been received? What response has this movement got from across the country? When we talk about this in this regard, we might want to see one of the responses that we had got from an actress, Tanushree Datta, who was very pertinent in who was very pertinent in being the uh, supporter of Me Too movement in India, and she was one of the many actresses that spoke against the wrongs that were done to her through the Me Too movement. So let's just look at her response. So she says, I can't help but laugh when I hear such ridiculous things, such as Men Too, and it makes me angry that women in positions of public domain and influence will stoop to massage the male ego to find their acceptance. Now, two things over here. Not just Tanushri Datta, but I personally know many feminists, many female scholars who classify themselves as feminists, who consider this idea of presenting a neutral picture of the laws that we have in India as something which is ridiculous, and they are of the view that we totally do not need something like Men Too movement. And second thing which the actress exclaimed is she's backlashing the people who are speaking against the wrong being done towards men. So she actually says that any woman who is in the public domain, who has the power to influence, they might, if they are speaking in favor of something like Men Too movement, they're actually trying to make themselves be more accepted, and they're trying to find a place in this male dominated society. So going by that rationale, that's something that many female scholars also agree with. Going by that rationale, when I'm speaking about the wrongs being done against men, even I might be considered as someone who is trying to massage the male ego, as actress Tanushri Datta says. So nevertheless, we being at a position that where we can put out our voice out and large in the public domain, I personally feel that my obligation is not only towards women. Just because I'm a girl, that doesn't mean that my obligation is only towards a female. But it's very important to know what the men face, right? And when you'll see some of the statistics that I'll show just in a while, you'll see that the issue does exist, and we cannot um, just put a blindfold on our eyes and say that no, it's only the women who suffer. Men suffer too, and that's what I'm going to show in a while. So let's just look at the some of the statistics in this present slide. It talks about a very grim topic, that's of suicide. Uh, but let's just have a look at the statistics. So the NCRB figures, they show that for every one married woman, two married men commit suicide. That's the ratio of suicide being committed by men. And the ratio of married men committing suicide, and I'll tell you in a while why I'm looking at both men committing as in unmarried men committing suicide as well as married men committing suicide. That's very important for our for the further topics that we are going to discuss now. These, and I mean, why are we even looking at the rate of suicides? So the Save Indian Family Foundation, that's another foundation which was very supportive of the Men Too movement. They refer to these NCRB data, and they exclaimed that this rate of suicide of married men, which is almost twice of that of women, it's something that's very concerning. And the president of CRISP, and if I might want to go back to our slide, CRISP is the NGO that started the Men Too initiative in India. So he exclaims that these suicides, he attributed this huge number of cases of suicide amongst married men to family stress. Now, when we talk about family stress, even from a psychological perspective, we know that family stress does involve stress on both the parties. While I do agree that typically we know that women are being subjected more to family stress, it's very normal, right? But we cannot totally say that women can never be the perpetrators, as in women can never file false complaints just to increase the stress of men. uh, we'll see some such cases, and we'll see for ourselves that these numbers, these high rates of suicide among men, and not just married men. I'll just show the statistics in a while. And these numbers have to do something with the false uh, accusation against men. So I mean, whenever a man is falsely accused of things like rape, if he's an unmarried man or maybe a married man, it does have serious implications on not just his reputation but his family's reputation. It has other serious implications like him losing the job, etc., etc. And we know that in India, a man is considered to be a criminal until and unless he's proven innocent. Although we know that the rule is that every accused should be assumed to be innocent until he or she is proven to be guilty. While the things don't work like that for men, we very well know that in this era of media, in this era of social media, we have media trial, social media trial, and many other things. So when a man goes through all of that and he sees himself finds himself in a state where he's really helpless, suicide might be one of the options. While I do not say that every man commits suicide because of only this factor, that is falsely being implicated in a case by a woman, uh, but yes, these factors do contribute. I mean, it's a legitimate reason for a man to give up his fight for justice and end his life, so as to end up the trauma, so as to end up the blood on not just on his forehead but against his family as well. So we'll see the male suicide index in India, and this is a study, and I have put down the source here as well. Although the source that I'm mentioning is a website that works for men's right, but I only use this website not to make this talk biased towards men, biased in favor of men, but the only reason was because the statistics and the graph shown there were really clear, and we can really see the steep rise in the male suicide index, and that's exactly what I want to present over here. So we see that there has been increase in the male suicide index, and the male suicide index is calculated as the number of the ratio between number of men committing suicide in an year in a year is to the number of female committing suicide in a year. And we see that in the slide as well, you can see I have noted some of the data that which we can very easily see from the graph as well, that the rise, the increase in the MSI is very steep. But we need to see one important thing over here, that the most steep rise in the MSI was during 2018 and 2019. Now we'll see what happened during these years. We'll see in a while there was an overruling of a case and things like that. We'll see that in a while, but just note this thing. So, and this index includes both married as well as unmarried men. So these are the data that we have, and these data are really concerning because we literally lose one man to suicide every 5.38 minutes. So that's really concerning. But as opposed to that, if we see the rate of suicide of women, it's 4 suicides every hour, while it's 11 suicides of men every hour. So I'm not saying that women are not under stress because they are less number of women are committing suicide, but we know that patriarchy has hit women. We agree with this. So we need to start accepting this fact and talk about this fact that patriarchy has hit men as well. Again, I'm not saying that all these cases of suicides are just because of false accusations against men or dragging them in false cases by women. But what I'm trying to say is, even if one portion of the men who committed suicide because of false accusation, that's something that we have to be concerned about. So we need to reduce the factors which might lead a man or a woman to commit suicide. And that's exactly why we're here to talk about that today. Now, we saw the male suicide index, which includes both married and unmarried men. And we'll see the husband suicide index. That's regarding the ratio between suicide committed by married male and suicide committed by a married female. Even here, we see that the loss rate is higher. We lose 7.86 7.6 husbands every hour, while on the other hand, 2.96 wives commit suicide every hour. And we can just see that there has been a steep increase in the rate of husband suicide index between 2018 and 2019. Now that's relevant for something we'll see in a while, how we can relate all of this to false cases, maybe of dowry or maybe any other false case, right? So yes, this is a question that we have to ask ourselves, and that's what we are going to look at now. This question is very important for us. So we have seen the grim situation of men committing suicide, huge number of men committing suicide. Now we have to ask ourselves a question, that besides the stress of securing a job, besides the stress of getting good scores in examinations, what could be the other factors that led so many men to commit suicide, right? So even if one of that factor is the rise of false cases against men, we need to talk about that. So yes, okay, I'll discuss the misuse of different gender biased laws in India. I mean, when I use the term gender bias, I do not mean to demean the value of those laws. I only mean to qualify the nature of those laws, and because these laws are only for the protection of women, so I use the term gender biased. Now we all know that some of the important provisions that we have in this regard are provisions safeguarding women against sexual harassment, against offenses against their body, such as rape and molestation, or outraging the modesty of a woman. Then other such laws include protection of women against sexual harassment at workplace, and we also have POCSO Act, which is not gender biased, but we do see that the number of cases that involve girl victims are more than the cases which involve male victims in the even under the POCSO Act. So I'll consider that as well. Then we also have other laws for safeguarding of women that are very well known to be misused, specifically Section 498A of IPC, which is regarding cruelty, and other things like dowry demands. How or are we have to see the question, are they being misused or not, and what the judiciary has to say in that regard. So first I'll look at we look at the misuse of rape laws. And right in 2013, Justice Kailash Gambhir, he came up with this observation that it's a sad state of affairs in our country that rape cases are being used as a weapon for vengeance and vendetta. Now, when he says this, he refers to the cases in which a man, the cases which involve sexual intercourse on the false promise of marriage. So we do know that these laws have been made to safeguard the women, but these loopholes are there, and they are being used by women to force the man to marry her, or maybe, for example, as Justice Gambhir says, it's used as a weapon for vengeance. For example, if two people are in a relationship and they have consensual sexual intercourse, and that's not on false pretext of marriage, and by that I mean that the man had bona fide intention to marry her but could not marry her due to some genuine circumstances, or maybe the girl's family did not agree, then in these cases we do see false cases of rape being registered against the man. And the reason why this is done is either to seek vengeance. So, okay, you broke up with me, I'm gonna just drag you to the court. Or maybe it's also used as a means to force the man to marry her. Now the man who has no other way out, he'll say, okay, well, we can settle this outside the court and just take the case back and I'll marry you. So things like that. These things do exist, and that's exactly why these things have been acknowledged by the judiciary as well. Now, moving ahead, I'll cite a very recent case in which, now, see, in the previous case, we saw that Justice Gambhir talked about rape laws being used as a weapons for vengeance and vendetta. We have this very excellent example of it being used as a weapon of venting out one's anger. In this case, the victim, she filed a complaint against the said accused, and then she later filed an apology before the court. And she said that I just filed it in a fit of anger. I filed the case out of anger, and I want this FIR to be quashed, because if I go ahead with this case, then my matrimonial life will be destroyed. So out of anger. So it was easy for the girl to say that I filed the FIR out of anger and I want it to be quashed and I don't want to go ahead with the case, but what about the man? So we know this very interesting thing in our Indian law is that the victim's name in such cases is kept confidential, but it's not so for the accused. Now, because it's not so for the accused, even if the court might acquit him, the blot stays with him and his family forever. and that's true. That's literally true. And in this case, the woman, she lodged a complaint out of anger, but her anger went too far, and it might have literally destroyed the man, because everyone comes to know when a rape case is filed against you. Now, in this regard, Mindra Gover exclaimed very emphatically that there's other issue in this regard. So we know that the age of statutory rape, and after the amendments, post Nirbhaya case, the amendments, we had this reduction of age from 18 to 16 years for statutory rape, and now we have these issues being seen on rise, and those issues are when for so this whole idea of a girl's virginity being tied very closely to the family's reputation is something that Indians are very obsessed with. Not just Indian, many other countries as well. But as we are talking about India, I would like to comment upon that. So this idea of girls' virginity being something that governs a family's honor is something that we are obsessed with. And because we reduce this age of statutory rape from 18 to 16, now parents have control over the lives of these young people. And imagine if they have sexual intercourse, consensual sexual intercourse, if the parents come to know about this, now they have this thing going on their head. Now my girl, my daughter, she lost her virginity, and if someone comes to know about this, what will we say to the society, that my girl was sexually active? No. Before that happens, I'll go ahead, fall, and lodge a case against the man and say that he raped my girl, he raped my daughter. That's an easy way for the girl's family, because then the blame will be on the boy, not on the girl, and the whole society will look at the girl and say that okay, she was a victim of non-consensual sex, non-consensual sex. Now, so we do have these things as well, and that's how Brinda Grover also exclaimed in the statement that we have on this slide. Moving ahead, we'll see that a very recent case in 2020. Now, this is a good jurisprudence in this regard. We do see that some of the courts are being super active and are trying to do away with this increasing rate of false charges against men, specifically on the grounds of rape. Now we see that the Chennai court, it awarded one of the Chennai courts, it's city courts, it awarded a compensation of 15 lakhs to a man because he was arrested on rape charges, and he had to face trial for more than 7 years, and then he was finally acquitted because his DNA did not match to the DNA of the child, um, who the woman delivered, and the woman was the one who accused him of rape. But this does not happen in all the cases. This is one of its kind type of case, and we literally do not have such cases. Um, we do not have such jurisprudence in India, such uh, developed jurisprudence in India where the court will grant some compensation to the man who was accused of a false who was falsely accused of rape, etc. So, but we do have some legal recourses. We do have an option of filing case against the woman who falsely accused of, uh, falsely implicating a man, and we do have those recourses. But imagine if a man goes through all that, you think really he will have the energy to go ahead and fight another case? I don't really think so. Things like that, even after being pronounced innocent, the taboo continues, and it does. And people say that, oh, okay, maybe the girl might have been silenced, or maybe he might have you know falsely not falsely, but like maybe he might have uh, given money to the witnesses and made them give statements in his favor, things like that. Even if a man is pronounced innocent, the society does not want to look at him in a way that he's innocent, and the taboo continues. So just compensation might not be a response to the increasing rate of false cases against men. So what could be the other way, other recourses that we might have? We might, so we do have some time, some instances where the court did warn the girl or woman who was falsely accusing the man that she may have to face the consequence if this happens again. So in the last case as well, in the case of Lalit Kumar, we saw that, and the bench observed that she was liable to be prosecuted under law. But because she gave an unconditional apology, this step was not taken by the court. But, compensation, getting the woman punished, things like these do not take away the pain of the man who had to go through all of this. And that does explain the rate of suicide, the increased rate of suicide. Nevertheless, we have this 2019 Kerala High Court judgment in which the judge noted a very grim situation of a growing trend in towards resorting to the filing of false cases against the biological father himself under POCSO Act to win a custody battle that might be pending before family courts. So in the starting itself, I told you about these why the Men Too movement came up, and one of the main things that it also focuses onto is the things that men have to suffer because of a disturbed situation. Sometimes he's not being allowed to take the custody, and in this regard, the POCSO Act has come into play as a weapon to not let the biological father have the custody of the female child. And, I mean, this is a very sorry state of affairs, and it's great that Kerala High Court noted this and emphatically noted this. So these are some of the things which we less talk about, but these things do exist. Now, one of the very recent case, 2000, the judgment came out in February 2021, and it's regarding a false case, a frivolous case that was false, that was lodged against a man on under Section 354, outraging the modesty. And the reason for the lodging of this case was because they had some fight and some rift in with regard to parking their cars, and this woman, she got very angry, and then she went and filed a case against him. That was literally false case, just to make him suffer. So the court did not find reasons to convict the man, of course, because it was a false case. And the Delhi High Court did not just stop there by acquitting the man, but they also imposed a penalty on the petitioner. Now, this is something that might help to stop women from filing false cases against men. Why? Because everyone loves money. They literally don't want to lose huge money for filing false cases against someone. This, I might think, might be a good solution besides punishing them, besides awarding compensation to men. But yeah, filing this case was a, I mean, I consider this as a very welcome gesture by the Delhi High Court. And now they also observe that, even the police, they have a lot of things going on. They have a lot of genuine cases to attend to, and these false cases, these only make the police to spend their time in investigating, and time, energy, everything is spent, and that's something that we have to stop. So we literally have another reason as well, to stop these false cases from being filed. Now, as I talked about the gender biased laws, one of these gender biased laws is also besides the Domestic Violence Act in India, which literally is named as Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act, as if men do not undergo domestic violence. Well, that's something that I oppose, and even personally, I really think that these laws, which are very outrightly gender biased, need to be revised. And let's just talk for a moment about the Domestic Violence Act, maybe. So we have Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act. So we are saying that men do not undergo domestic violence at the hand of their spouse. Why? Because we are so obsessed with this idea of men being strong, right? And then even if they face domestic violence at the hand of their spouse, they don't speak out because of the shame that, oh my god, you are a man and you got hit by your wife, things like that. And B, we are also excluding other things from the arena of this Domestic Violence Act. So now we know that the Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality, and if we just have Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act, how will we protect a gay couple living in a live-in relationship, and if one of them abuse their partner, domestic I mean abuse their partner physically, sexually, emotionally, mentally, right? So there is a reason, there are many reasons why we need revision of these laws. Now when we talk about the Posh Act, again it does need some revision in the regard, because we have this law for protection of women, and I do agree that women face sexual harassment at the hands of their colleagues, and it makes it very difficult for them to continue their work and continue to focus on their career. But by saying that, and by only saying that, we are ignoring the fact that even men can face molestation at the hand of women. And that's true, because imagine if there is a woman who is a head of an institution, and she asks for sexual advances from her male colleague. Two things over here. First, how will he prove it? Right. Because she will go out and say, no, I didn't do anything. He was the one who sexually harassed me. And second, this gender biasness, uh, it will cost the man everything. Maybe he'll be fired if he cannot prove it. So things like these do happen. And the second thing about this Posh Act is also that, we have these false cases against men, sometimes because the head did not give the woman, say, appraisal, or maybe promotion, etc., etc., or maybe there is some rivalry amongst the two colleagues, and she goes ahead and uses this um, act in her favor, and she goes and files a false complaint under Posh Act. So in this regard, Delhi High Court came up with a very good a very good precedent. I really want this to become a precedent. They literally ordered a huge sum of cost against the petitioner. I'm sorry, against the woman for filing this false case, and the sum was huge. It's 50,000. So this might stop women from going ahead and misusing these laws that are biased in their favor. And even the court, they granted liberty to the employer to take action against the petitioner for filing this false complaint. So not just rape laws, not just POXO Act, even Posh Act is being misused. Now we have this very interesting case where we'll see a false claim of dowry death. It's literally, it literally made me laugh, because there was this woman who had been reportedly killed by her husband, and after a few months of marriage she was missing, and her parents went and filed a complaint for dowry harassment and murder. And then this woman is found to after a few years she is found to be living with her lover in another state, in Madhya Pradesh. She was from Bihar. She went to Madhya Pradesh to live with her lover. And even the parents, I mean, the details of the case are not yet out, so I can't comment upon that. But literally, the parents identified a decomposed body of another woman, and they said, okay, yeah, she's my daughter. So imagine a situation in which even the parents might be involved in the case. I don't know. I mean, why would people want to do this? You have the recourse of divorce. You can just file a divorce and get rid of your husband if you really want to live with your lover. But no, you literally wanted to stage your death, and then you wanted to get that man, like throw that man in jail and then live with your lover. If this is something which is true and the court really finds that this is something what happened, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's a very sorry state of affair in India. Now 498A, we all know that this is something that's misused a lot, and this will explain why the husband suicide index is really high. Now, not just dowry harassment cases, but 498A, oh my god, it has been used by as a weapon by women for so long. And even the courts, they have taken consideration of this, and that's exactly why in 2017 the Supreme Court said that we need some mechanism to check this increasing number of false cases under section 498A. So because there are women who will just fight with their husband, and then they'll go and file a case against him and his own family just to seek vengeance. Things like these do happen. And the Supreme Court said that the automatic arrest of the husband and family should stop, and we should have a family welfare committee to avoid this misuse. Now, this was something which was not very welcomed by feminists, and the hullabaloo and everything, it led to the Supreme Court overruling its own decision 1 year later. And they said that this constitution of family welfare committee is an over use of power, and it's erroneous, and this should not continue. Nevertheless, we do see that there are a number of cases where men and their family are falsely implicated under section 498A. So it's in the hand of the police to scrutinize the complaints closely, right? So that was what the Supreme Court said. So even though it did away with the family welfare committee, which I personally feel was a very welcome step, but then it still said that we are not saying that there is no such grim situation of increase in the rise of false cases against section 49A. We do acknowledge that, but just the family welfare committee thing will not be it's something that we overrule. What were the implications of this? And that will again overruled. 2018, you see the dowry harassment cases as well as the cases under section 498A, and 2019 after the overruling. You see, the numbers exploded. I mean, I'm not just saying exploded just because 25,000 extra cases were there, but literally in a few months after the case was overruled, in a few months we just saw 25,000 more cases dowry harassment as well as harassment as well as cruelty under section 498A. Why? How did this happen? When there was this family welfare committee thing, we did not have these extra 25,000 cases. These numbers do speak something. Now, in this regard, I would like you all to also see the NCRB data, which shows on an average 1 lakh cases are filed against men under and their families under section 498A. But look at the conviction rate. It was 20% in 2011, it was 14% in 2016, And this is the conviction rate under section 498A. So there is a very sharp decrease in the rates of conviction, which is a good indication of the fact that these cases might have been false. Right? Now, we need to compare this with a total conviction case. I mean, I'm not just saying that less men are convicted under section 498A. We do see that there is 46% of conviction under all the other IPC sections, which means that this particular section 498A is being used as a weapon by women and being used to, seek vengeance or something like that. So this gap does indicate something, why we need to be concerned about the husband suicide index that I talked about in the starting. Now, we know, as I told earlier as well, that men are assumed to be guilty until they are pronounced innocent, and that's why NHRC, it recommended in one of its studies that we need to keep the name of the accused under wraps as well, because the turmoil that they face. And in this regard, a very recent case that we saw of Vishnu Tiwari, who had to spend 20 years of his life in jail, and finally, very recently, he was pronounced innocent by the Allahabad High Court. I mean, look at what he has to say. And he asks us this question, he asks the judiciary this question: what should I look forward to? Right. So no one came to receive him when he was acquitted. As I said, this trauma continues even after getting acquitted. I mean, he got acquitted after spending 20 years in jail. 20 years is huge. So the implication of these false cases are huge when we look at it from the perspective of the men who suffer. Now, as in introduction, Ashwarya also told about the Zomato row. That's exactly why we are having this discussion. So, even though this case was not a case which involved an offense of sexual harassment or something, but the reason why this case was hyped is because on one hand you have this woman who is claiming that I was hit by the Zomato a delivery boy, and on this other hand we have this man who has been suspended from his employment and who is the sole bread earner of his family. So we have this tendency. I mean, what are we doing to the woman then? I mean, she's a media influencer and she'll continue to get her followers. But what about this man? Do we even have a comparison between the situations of these two? Imagine if the Zomato delivery boy did not do anything and he's right. And that's something that's coming up to surface as well. The Bengaluru police, they said that, we are not able to find enough evidence against Kamraj, the Zomato delivery boy. And even the complainant is not cooperating with us. So we are trying to drop this case, and this case doesn't have any life in itself. So imagine if we really come to a conclusion that Kamraj was innocent, totally innocent. What will we do to the girl? He has filed a case against her, but the hierarchy between them, I mean, the difference in money, difference in their financial conditions, difference in their stance of influence. I mean, in their power of influencing other people, etc., etc. We might see that those cases might be dropped, because at the end, the Zomato delivery boy, all that he wants is his job. I mean, he's the sole bread earner of his family, and he has been suspended on the charges. So even when he has not been pronounced guilty, he is living a life of a person who has already been pronounced guilty, right? So these are the implications and of false cases against women. I'm not commenting upon this case. I'm just saying, imagine if this case is false. Now, let's just not imagine about a case being false case, let's just see a practical example, a real example. So all of us, we know Sarabjit Singh, who was recently acquitted of the charges. We very well know about this case. We are well aware of what Jaslene did to him, and there was a fight amongst them, a verbal fight amongst them at a traffic signal, and she posted her picture on social media. I mean, social media is a great weapon for women these days. Now, yeah, we also had this, if I might want to recall, we had this instance in which a woman falsely accused someone of rape, and that boy was, I guess, teenager, and he committed suicide. That explains social media is being used ruthlessly by women as well, not just men, women as well. So in this case, she did the same. She posted his picture and wrote all types of stuff against him. He was charged, and the trial began. Now this woman, she went to Canada and she started her studies, and she did not come to attend a single trial. And when she came to attend a trial, then the trial went ahead, and you know just once or twice was when she came to attend a trial, and then she said that, I was busy studying in Canada and I could not come. And okay, well, we had this man who was literally attending every single trial. This case took a lot of time to be resolved just because this woman was just not ready to attend all the trials. And finally, he was acquitted. Now, even though he was acquitted, how, I mean, how will we compensate the loss that he faced? He lost his job, he lost his reputation, his family members were under stress. Imagine if this man also committed suicide, just like many other men who do commit suicide because of these reasons. This is one example of man who continued his fight and got an order of acquittal. But there are a lot of men who might not be acquitted and they are innocent, and then the woman wins. So these are some of the cases that we have to think about. Now, this woman, Jasleen Kaur, who had filed a case against Sarabjit, she said that, he actually got acquitted because he had more advantage than me because he was in India and I was in Canada, and he used this against me. I mean, if she had filed this case against him, it was her duty, and even the court said that it was her duty to attend the trial. And if she didn't, then it doesn't mean that, this man was at advantage or she was at disadvantage because she was in Canada completing her studies. So these things do happen. Now, these things bring us to question. I mean, makes us think that, is it the right time? Is it a high time that we need to revise our laws? And this is a very good representation that I found in Times of India, and that's why I have this on my slide over here. So it identifies 4 key areas where lawmakers need to focus. And, as one was also suggested by NHRC, keeping the accused's identity under wraps, keeping it confidential. Now, trial and punishment for the woman who falsely accuses the man. We do have these jurisprudence of some of the high courts, specifically Delhi High Court, where we also saw that there are fines being levied against women who are falsely implicating men, etc., etc. But the cases being filed by men against these women for falsely accusing them, these cases are less. I mean, very few men have that energy to do that. So this is something which we might think about. Maybe we can give the power to the court to take some action in this regard, right? Apart from levying a penalty against them or reprimanding them in words, maybe they can be made to face trials, etc., etc. Now, the third area that it very well states, this pictorial representation is, courts must be lenient in giving bail in cases where it's established that both parties were in a consensual relationship. Now this is important from the point of view that we I mean the thing that we discussed earlier as well. There are some cases, specifically rape cases, where we have the victim coming to the court to seek redressal because she says that she had been falsely her consent has been taken falsely, was taken falsely on the pretext of a false promise of marriage. So there's a suggestion that even I agree with, because generally it's seen, I mean, the practitioners will know this even better. Generally, it's seen that it's being wrongly used by women to get the man to get the man agreed to marry her, and to maybe seek vengeance of a breakup that they went through, things like that. So this idea of consent being falsely taken on the false pretext of marriage, this consent being taken on false pretext of marriage. Now recently we also had a judgment by the Supreme Court where they said that this idea of false promise of marriage is something that we have to take into consideration, and not all promises of marriage are false. There might be genuine circumstances in which excuse me, the man might not be able to marry, and in those cases the consensual sexual relationship between them cannot be termed as rape. So because, and the reason being that the promise was bona fide and the consent was correctly sought. So that's something. And the last suggestion that the pictorial representation gives says that the police must conduct a preliminary investigation before proceeding with arrest in such cases. This was something that we also saw in the case of Rajesh, and which was then overruled in in just 1 year regarding the family welfare committee. So um we saw that the Supreme Court came up with a way to reduce the workload on police, but then in 2018 they again said that no, it's the primary work of the police and not any other family welfare committee or something to take consideration of preliminary investigation before going ahead with the arrest. But yeah, we need to make this clear that this thing of automatic arrest in such cases, specifically section 498 is something which is very problematic, and we need to find a way through this. um, Besides other things like keeping the person's identity, keeping the accused identity confidential, etc., etc., we need to work our way through this as well. Now it's our time to rethink on the question that we started with. Now that we have seen these cases of false accusations against men, we have seen the lives of men getting destroyed. Example, we saw a man who was in the jail for 20 years and now he's shattered and broken, and he doesn't know what to do with his life. We saw the huge rate of suicide cases, not just amongst unmarried men but amongst married men as well, which explains that these false cases do have a role to play in the increasing rates of suicide and distress amongst men as well, right? So now we have to rethink this question, re-ask this question to us: do we really need a Men Too movement? And I personally would say, my personal thinking is that we really do need. When we can have a Me Too movement, we can have a Men Too movement. After all, the true idea, the true definition of feminism is not just empowerment of women, but it's regarding empowerment of women, not at the cost of subjugating men. And the true idea of feminism, I mean, a true feminist would support a Men Too movement, because for a true feminist, the idea of equality is what matters. And that's exactly why, if we are very happy to speak up against the wrong being done against women, we need to speak up against the wrong being done against men as well. And it's high time now that we address these situations, we need to stop these rise of cases of false implication against men, false accusation of men. We need to address these situations. Judiciary is taking great steps, specifically Delhi High Court. It has time and against levied costs against petitioners who come up with these false cases and reprimanded them as well. So we need some guidelines in this regard, maybe revision of laws. For example, I told about the Domestic Violence Act, which is literally gender biased. So there are reasons besides these false accusations. There are other reasons as well that we need for revision of these laws, and we literally need to ask ourselves this question, each one of us. Do we need a Men Too movement? I personally say yes, and I would be really excited for some of us, some of you, to share your views as well in this regard, and then we can have a discussion or maybe take up questions. Yeah. So that's all that I had from my side, and I really welcome questions and comments. Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't have questions, maybe or any comments, maybe the moderator can guide me further in this regard. If you have any questions, any comments.
Thank you, ma'am, for your guidance. In the comment section, there are not so questions regarding that, and one is already answered that the feedback form has got.
So if you don't have questions, maybe or any comments, maybe the moderator can guide me further in this regard. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the session then.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the session, Ashwarya.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There was some network issue from my side. Yeah, there is one question, ma'am, about that. One is saying that can you please tell in that case where a woman. For your guidance.
I'll read that question. So we have a question from Sejal Malik. Can you please tell in that case where a woman? I think Ashwarya, you need to mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. Can you please tell in that case where a woman also equally a part of sexual intercourse, but after that she can do the case, and what a man can do in that case? Yeah, that's a very good question. So we do have this provision of recourse for men when they are faced with these false accusations. Section 200, section 1, if I'm missing, I might be wrong, but I guess it's 181 or 182. Just that's regarding false filing a false case against someone. In those cases, the recourse that the man has is first to prove that the case was false. I mean, again, it's biased in favor of women, and that's exactly why we have these discussions. So the recourse that he will have will be after he's proved innocent, and that takes a huge time. But yeah, when that's done, he can go ahead and file a case against the woman for falsely implicating him, for filing a false case against him, etc., etc. So yeah, that's a punishable offense. That's a criminal offense in IPC. So that's something that they could do. So Sayed Anwar Ali has a question: Is Law Commission has Law Commission taken anything? Okay, so I guess you want to know the Law Commission's views in this regard. So, um, NHRC did present its report in this regard, but Law Commission did speak about revisions of law, but not specifically against the section 376 or something, or other sections. But yes, with regard to section 498A, which pertains to cruelty, we do have comments in this regard that this is being used as a wrongful weapon, or maybe as a weapon for extortion and things like that. So, but we are still to get further elucidation from Law Commission in this regard of rise of false cases against men. We do have NCRB data in this regard that's very clear about the rates of conviction being very low. Advika has a question. She asks, "Ma'am, is monetary compensation sufficient?" So totally, I would agree with you, Advika, that this is not sufficient. And as he also stated, that sometimes we saw in that many courts did give some monetary compensation, but then I commented that we do not actually have other recourses being taken into consideration, right? Not just monetary compensation will help, but we do need to have other recourses. For example, punishing the petitioner who brought up the false case, or maybe um, telling them to pay some fine, as the Delhi High Court also did in a lot of times, right? So yeah, that's something that we might take into consideration. Anwar Ali has a question. Even after Arnesh Kumar versus State of Bihar. Okay, so I apologize. I'm not well versed with the facts of the case, so I couldn't comment upon this specific case that you said, but I would. Okay, so yeah, that's true. That even after the number, so I would assume that you are talking about the increasing rates of false cases, and that's even after that, 498A is non-compoundable and non-billable. So yeah, that's something that we have to be that's a grim state of affairs. And yes, Sayed Ali, that literally calls for a revision for the laws, right? And you very rightly pointed it out, and thank you for that. Tiruthi has a question. Ma'am, can you share your views on Zomato case? I'm sorry, I could not. Yeah, who do you support? My views, personally. So in this case, I really feel that I'm not to give any judgment and not to show that I'm biased against the woman or something, but I really feel that the things that she's saying is a bit uh, hard to believe, because again, I'm not being biased against her, but then we have some of the video clippings that even I saw, that she's showing that I had a cut over here, but when she was speaking about her nose injury, she didn't have that cut. And even the nose injury, the police hasn't found anything substantial, and the latest statement by the Bengaluru police is that she's not cooperating. So kind of, I feel that Kamraj is innocent. That's my personal view. Not again, not to comment upon the case and not to give any judgment from my regard, but yeah, but that's my personal view. If you want to know my personal view in that regard, so yeah. So yes, I don't see any further questions. So I think yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this informative session. Now we don't have any question, so I think we should end this session. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you.